Hi, this is Kim Eierman from EcoBeneficial, bringing you more useful tips to help improve our environment. Today, I have the great pleasure of interviewing Phyllis Stiles. Now, Phyllis is the founder of Bee City USA, and I'd like to thank you for joining me today, Phyllis. Thank you so much.
Great to be here, Kim.
Now, Phyllis, we met in 2013 at the Halloween Native Plant Conference, and you told me about this project you had been working on for about a year at that point. So tell listeners a little bit about that project and how you formed it and where you are now.
Sure. Back in, before 2012, I had been a beekeeper for a few years, and it just opened up a whole new world to me. The world of the pollinators and the flowers that they interact with. And I just became very, very concerned about pollinator decline and got some friends together and said, is there something that's not already being done that maybe we could do? And out of those conversations, we designed Bee City USA, a certification program for cities that are willing to accept commitments of things they can do both on private land and public land that will enhance habitat for pollinators, and hopefully one city at a time start turning this pollinator decline around.
Now, your model, as I recall, was Tree City USA?
Yeah, that was very inspiring because the notion was that back in the 70s, there was concern that urban areas were losing their tree canopy. But if cities became educated about how important that tree canopy was and set up systems, actually institutionalize protecting their tree canopy and continuing to enlarge it, that they would do a better job. And so now, all these years later, so many cities have joined the Tree City USA program. So we figured out that if cities could get educated and mobilized to protect their tree canopy, why couldn't they do the same thing for the pollinators that keep our planet blooming and green and supplying us with rich, diverse diets?
And you've taken it even further because you now have these bee campuses USA. Explain that.
That's right. Sure. Back in 2015, there was a lot going on in the Ashland, Oregon area. And so Ashland had become a bee city, and Southern Oregon University is located in Ashland, and they were surrounded by Talent and Phoenix and Gold Hill, all bee cities. And so the director of their grounds staff, Mike Oxendine, contacted me and he said, hey, we want in on this. We think we can do a lot on university campuses. Would that be possible? And I said, only if you help us design the program. And he and his staff and his students did just that. They helped us design the program, and boy, has it taken off.
And how many bee campuses do you have now in the United States?
79.
Wow. And how many bee cities?
95.
Wow, that's amazing. And you're now also, you've got, I guess it's a sister organization in Canada, Bee City Canada?
Yeah, that was pretty cool too. And that actually came out of Ashland. So they're just a hotbed of pollinator conservationists out there. There was a woman named Shelley Candell from Toronto in Canada who has a vacation home in Ashland. And she happened to hear ladies talking over coffee about their Bee City USA program in Ashland. And so she said, I'm sorry for eavesdropping here, but I have to know more about this. And that led to our conversation. And in 2016, we helped her get Bee City Canada started. And it's taken off and just doing a great job.
And how many cities do they have now in Canada that are bee cities?
You know, I haven't checked lately. Last time I looked, I think it was about 23,
wow.
But I'm sure it's more than that now.
It's impressive. So it's really caught fire. That's so incredibly exciting. And speaking of exciting, there are a couple things that have happened in the last few years. One is you were named the North American Pollinator Protection Campaign's U.S. Pollinator Advocate of the Year. That's quite astounding. That's a very long title too, but that's pretty impressive, Phyllis. Congratulations on that. And then something else exciting happened in 2018, and tell listeners what happened then.
Oh boy, pretty exciting. We were just a volunteer organization from 2012 until 2018, and I was the volunteer director. And in 2018, after a lengthy conversation over the course of a year, we decided to merge with the Xerces Society out of Portland, Oregon. And so now we're an initiative of the Xerces Society, and I am a staff member continuing to lead the Bee City USA program.
And for listeners who may not know what the Xerces Society is, and I hope all of you do because I mention it frequently, tell us what the Xerces Society is and what they do.
They've been around for about 50 years, protecting invertebrates of all kinds, so, freshwater mussels, dragonflies, but their work has really come to emphasize pollinators over the past couple of decades. And so they have staff in 13 states and more than 50 staff all told. And it's the largest pollinator conservation nonprofit organization in the world. They're doing fantastic work around agricultural conservation of pollinators, and now through the Bee City USA program, working more in urban areas.
And they've got a terrific website, just absolutely loaded with useful information, some very hands-on information that's actionable, and also some really interesting research. And they publish books on these topics that we're discussing today, pollinators and related topics, don't they?
Yeah, they're quite prolific, actually. It's sort of overwhelming when you go to the Xerces website and look at all the resources. Many of them are freely downloadable, so I urge the listeners to check those out. And then they have several books as well. The 100 Plants to Feed the Bees is very popular, and Attracting Native Pollinators is right at my fingertips all of the time. I use it constantly.
I own every one of their books, full confession. Gosh, the Xerces Society, I've heard it referred to as kind of the Audubon Society for Invertebrates. I think that's a pretty good analogy, don't you?
I do. We constantly refer to the insects and the invertebrates generally as the fabric that holds the world together. They're that important.
And listeners, please do look at the Bee City USA website, and wonderful resources there too, and the Xerces website. And do not forget to join. These organizations can only survive if we support them. So please make sure to join and tell friends and neighbors that this is a worthy cause. So please get them to join too. One thing I love that the Xerces Society has is the pollinator habitat sign. And gosh, that's a great way to tell your neighbors and friends and passersby that you're doing something a little bit different. So, Phyllis, how does a city or a campus actually become a Bee City USA or a Bee Campus USA?
Sure. You look at our website, and we have a Bee City USA tab, and we have a Bee Campus USA tab, and on each of those tabs there's a drop down that says facts and forms. And so if you go to that FAQ and form page, there's an online application. In the case of the cities, there's a template resolution that's there for you to fill in the blanks on and have your city council adopt it. We also allow counties to become Bee Cities, even though we call it Bee City USA.
That's good to know.
And and so when they apply and they adopt that resolution, which we like to see a draft of before they actually adopt it, they are accepting numerous commitments. And among those commitments are having a standing committee of pollinator advocates who are there to educate their community on what pollinator conservation means, and to engage the community, to mobilize the community from top to bottom to do the work of enhancing pollinator habitat. And then they're required to host at least one educational event a year, and they're all doing much more than that. They're required to have a pollinator habitat plan that includes a pollinator-friendly integrated pest management plan and a recommended native plant species list that includes trees and shrubs as well as forbs. And then they're required to renew each year. And when they renew, they give us a report on what they accomplished the previous year. And that's invaluable. It's so inspirational for us, for them, for anybody who goes to our website and reads those reports. And it's inspiring for the network, because as our network grows, now we're up to 174 affiliates. We feel like the most important work that we can do is to share all those great things that each of the affiliates is doing, because they could not be more creative. And so we want to share whatever works for them with the other affiliates so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can all teach each other.
So what is the difference between a bee city and an affiliate?
Once they're certified, they become an affiliate.
I see. Okay. And, we spoke recently about this explosion of pollinator pathways in the Northeast where I'm located. And this seems to be just perfectly dovetailing in that movement, doesn't it?
It does. It's really great to see. That's what I mean about the creativity all across the country. Just when you thought of everything that could possibly be done, somebody comes up with something totally new, and it works, brilliantly to get people on board with enhancing habitat.
Yeah, and connecting these different patches is so critical for pollinator survival. So, all those bee cities are really initiating pathways, essentially, in my estimation. And is there?
Yeah, because. Well, I agree with you. And not only are we losing habitat, but the habitat that we do have is so fragmented. So anytime we can create bridges across habitat, even if it's a linear corridor, that allows the species to move and to find other mates, to expand the gene pool, and to shift their range slightly if things just become untenable where they are. They need those pathways.
Now, talk a little bit about the Bee Campus USA movement. How do they apply? How do they administer the program?
It's very similar to Bee City USA. They don't have a resolution to adopt because they're an independent campus, and so there's no elected body per se. So that's a difference. Another difference is that they have to incorporate pollinator conservation into their service learning program, and they have to incorporate it into their curriculum. And while bee cities have to have at least one street sign declaring that they are a Bee City USA with our logo on it, on the campus, what we require is that they have to have some kind of interpretive signage to educate people on their campus about pollinator habitat and conservation. And it doesn't have to be permanent signage. It can be temporary, but we always want them to be using their campus as a model of what pollinator habitat can look like, and to explain that to the public and the people who are living and working on that campus.
So how does this work in practical terms? There's somebody who's either a staff person at a university or, possibly a student who says, boy, this would be a good idea. What do I do now? I mean, how does the workflow happen?
We get calls and emails from students who want their campuses to be an affiliate of the Bee Campus program, but it can come from faculty, from grounds staff, from the president, from administrators. We've got examples of every one of those. We've even had it come from an alumnus of a campus. They got the fire started for that campus. And the same is true of our Bee City program. We never know who the pollinator champion is going to be. In one case, in Thousand Oaks, California, it was a 6-year-old boy who wrote a letter to the mayor of Thousand Oaks and said, I think that Thousand Oaks should become a Bee City because we need our pollinators. And the mayor read the letter and looked at our website and said, he's right.
Wow, that's impressive. I wish I had that influence. That's pretty remarkable. You've told me that you're actually willing to provide, some help to either a college campus or to a municipality who's trying to kind of figure out how to do this. Is that right? Can people contact and say, how do I move this forward? I need some advice.
Mm-hmm. My days are filled with those conversations, either by email or by phone. The questions are sometimes similar, sometimes really different, and they can have unique situations. But in the process of becoming a bee city or a bee campus, and in the process of actually implementing the program, questions are going to come up. And what we bring to the table is all of this knowledge from the experience we've already gained since 2012 and the 50 years of knowledge at Xerces and the more than 50 staff members at Xerces. And so I tell you, it is so nice now. Before 2018, if I had a question, I would just try to find the answer as best I could through all the resources that are out there. But now when I have a question from one of our prospective or current affiliates, I can send an email to the pollinator staff or to the pesticide staff at Xerces or the endangered species staff, and I can say, I have this question. Is this something you might be able to help with? And I get responses that same day, and then in the weeks to come, and I transfer all of that information to whoever asked the question.
That's really great to have that resource at your fingertips. Makes Bee City USA that much more powerful. That's terrific. And you've got a map on the Bee City USA website, and listeners, the URL for that is beecityusa.org. And you've got a map of where all your bee cities are currently, and it's expanding, and it's coast to coast. It's coast to coast, right?
Well, that's so funny you asked that, Kim, because back in 2012, when Asheville agreed to be the first bee city, and we chose the name USA, it was a pretty bold name to choose. We had calls and emails in the next 2 years, but nobody bit the bullet and completed the application process until Talent, Oregon, with about 6,000 people, Dolly Warden, who will always be my hero, she did it. She convinced her neighbors and her community that this would be a good thing for Talent, Oregon. And when she did, in the fall of 2014, suddenly we were coast to coast.
And it looks like, what's your most northern one? It looks like you're in New Hampshire, maybe? Let's see.
I think that's right.
And
no, in Vermont, too.
Vermont,
up there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And all the way down into Florida. You're in Texas. You're in California. And I'm looking. Denver looks like in that area. There's some town in Denver, but it looks like the core, the kind of the Midwest needs more bee cities. Phyllis, we gotta.
I agree. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, listeners, come on, let's get to it. If you're in the Midwest, you need to become a bee city. If you're anywhere in the United States, become a bee city. That's so exciting. And how about campuses? Where are they located now?
It's kind of the same look.
Yep, I'm looking at that map.
Yeah, the Midwest, we could use some more campuses for sure, but they're recruiting each other, and that's what I love about this program. ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, they have their national conferences. And our bee campuses have had good representation there, making presentations for us, and we always get a good response out of that. And other national meetings, we've had our affiliates make presentations. I make presentations sometimes at national meetings, and we always get new recruits every time there's one of those speeches, or if we have articles coming out. So it's really nice to see it spreading.
Well, I'm sure now that you have this affiliation with the Xerces Society, and by the way, listeners, for those of you who are trying to figure out how to spell that, that is XERCES.org, the Xerces Society. So I'll bet you're getting a lot of referrals, people that are visiting that website, curious. Now you've got the link to Bee City USA, and this other initiative, which I'm very excited about, the Be Better certified blueberries.
Yeah, that's another Xerces program, and it's taking off as well. Yeah. And the whole idea is to influence the producers of the foods that we eat or the products that we use that are, that have to be grown, and to make that whole process as pollinator friendly as possible. And then if they do commit to everything that's required to be Be Better certified, of course that's BEE, then they are listed among those suppliers, and of course they can use the label, the certification label.
And I actually recently, again this weekend, but purchased blueberries that had that certification at my local Costco. Thank you, Costco, for getting on board. You don't have to grow blueberries necessarily, although they are wonderful to grow, but there are lots of things that each of us can grow in our own landscapes to help pollinators, and I'm sure listeners would benefit from a few tips that you might be willing to share with them about, gardening for pollinators in their own gardens.
That's right. Anybody can help. And whether it's in your own garden or in a community garden or just a planter on your windowsill, those pollinators will find it and they'll be so grateful. And so we encourage people to integrate as many native plants as they can, because we have such a shortage of native plants in our landscapes, usually in American ornamental landscapes. And so we're trying to change that and get people to appreciate those relationships that have evolved between plants and their pollinators over thousands, if not millions of years. And then we ask you to use fewer pesticides. The fewer pesticides, the better, particularly insecticides and fungicides, but even herbicides. We need to really reduce the amount of pesticides we're using, and that would go a long way towards helping to sustain pollinators.
And there's a lot of information on the Xerces website about the impact of some of these pesticides on pollinators. So, folks, if you're not convinced yet, take a look at that. Well, Phyllis, thank you so much for spending this time with us. What you've done is nothing short of remarkable. I give you so much credit for starting Bee City USA and making it the robust success that it is. Again, Phyllis Stiles, the founder of Bee City USA, an initiative of the Xerces Society, and I invite listeners to visit both of those websites. Thank you so much, Phyllis. I hope we'll be able to speak again soon.
Thank you, Kim. This has been fun.